Right, what have I got to do? Boosh. Well, yes, I realise this is empty, but I had to open this to test the light. So I'll quickly show you the box and then I'll show you the light itself. So it's, now I was calling this the Nebo until someone pointed out that that's not quite what it's supposed to be pronounced Nebo, even though there's only one E. I don't understand that, but there you go. Apparently it's called Nebo. So it's the Nebo Mycro and spelt with a Y to try and be cool or whatever. So bright ideas, micro headlamp, right? So 400 lumens, that's maximum on turbo, and it is rechargeable. Try me, you can't because I've taken it out, but obviously I had to take it out to test it. And you can use it for all of these purposes, or some you can't even imagine. And it has different modes. It has a red light mode, a green light mode. There's your auxiliary modes. And then the main beam will allow you to go from about 15 lumens up to 150 in normal, but then you have the 400 turbo. I'll quickly show you the back of the box. There's the back of the box there. It's just showing you where the power button is, and then on the other side you have the rechargeable section, and there's how you charge it, and there's the full list of the modes there just for people who need to know, and the run times, but I will discuss that. So I've been in here, so boosh, get that in the bin, wallop, not interested. Right, so let's see what you actually get. Now yes, there was a little bit more than this in the box, but we'll stick to the main things. So you get a lead to charge. Now it's okay, it's type A to type micro, so it's a micro USB. You can see the end there. So unfortunately it's not omnidirectional, it's not the newer type C, it's the old-fashioned type. That's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world, because people do still have these cables, and I understand that, but I would have liked to have seen type C, but never mind. I like the fact that it's a flattened cable. I mean, whether it's true or not, I don't know whether I would agree with it, but a lot of people say, well, the flat cables are a little bit more rigid and they get twisted up less. I don't know about that. I've got a pair of Jaybird wireless Bluetooth earbuds, and they've got a flattened section, and that still gets in a million complicated knots that even an expert can't get out of after 30 seconds. So I don't know whether this is the same, but I haven't carried this for a period of time. I've carried this for 2 weeks on and off in different pockets and coats and things, but I haven't carried this because obviously I would have had another cable with me. So you get this cable, but like I say, it's type A to micro USB, so the old-fashioned type. So it's a shame. I'll have to mark them down for that, because I'm getting sick and tired of lights not coming with type C. Everything's type C now, so boosh, get that in the bin. Right, let's look at the light, because you've had enough of me waffling on. Okay, so it's a single strap system, adjustable low. You can adjust the length by here. You can see just like that there, and then it goes around the head. So it goes around the circumference of the skull there. It's not a three-pointer where you would have one that goes over the top of the head there. I would argue I prefer a three-pointer. However, in this situation, it isn't needed because this is extremely light. It's a very, very light light. There's not a lot to it, as you can see. It's very small and minimalistic. Although having said that, it's not all plastic, and I'll show you. This section is, in fact, I'll bend that out so you can see. Okay, so all of this section is plastic. All of the rear and the side and this central section is plastic. Listen. However, this section, listen, slightly different sound. This is a metal ring, and then you have four, are they Torx heads or something? Or they look like Allen key. Okay, so hex driven fasteners in 4 locations there. So it's got a little tiny bit of weight, and you can feel the coolness from the metal section there, but it is anodized by the looks of it. It's certainly not heavy, and because of that I wore this with no problems whatsoever. When I first got this, I thought there's going to be a problem here, because you're supposed to wear it like that. So if you imagine this is the forehead on the right, and then when you want to tilt it, you can tilt it up and down. So you would tilt it like that. So it's got different settings, and I'll show you the tilt mechanism. It's simply plastic on a stopper there, so it tilts. I don't know how long that's going to last, but I've used this for a couple of weeks and there's been no issues, and I can't see any wear on that. Can you see that there? It just looks like plastic, but that I haven't come across any wear, and it's been up and down, up and down. It's been up and down more than a fiddler's elbow, but it's been fine so far. But this, I thought this was going to dig in. So if you imagine that's your forehead there, it didn't. I didn't find that at all. This certainly didn't dig in. I had no issues with that. But you can't take this off. You see how it's split here and it's split here. You can certainly take this out. It's not a problem. And you would want to do that on certain circumstances. For example, you have this metallic section here. This is metal, and it's a clip which allows you to clip it onto clothing. You can clip it down like that on webbing to the side and things like that. And it's also something that you can clip onto a cap. So if you imagine the peak of a cap, if you clip that in, and then you can rotate that down and look at what you want. Or you could put it on top of the cap, because it will, if you imagine that's your cap there, you can see how it would tilt where you need it to go, no problems. And it's light enough where I tried it on a cap, I had no issues. It didn't seem to break the cardboard in the peak of the cap. There was no issues in that regard. It has been fine like that. Okay, so I've given you a quick look at it, but let's discuss some of the specs on this thing. So it's the Nebo, not Nebo, as I was randomly calling it a couple of weeks ago. It's the Nebo Mycro headlamp, 400 lumens max, so that's on turbo. Problem is, there's step down involved, but we'll go over that. Okay, so it's an IPX4. Now that's a little bit of a problem. For me, with a headlamp, there's a suggestion there that you're going to be using that hands-free, so you need to rely on it. I would have preferred to have seen, IPX5 or plus. To be honest, the reason I have to put that is because it's got one of these flaps, look. Little bit weak. Water can get in there, so it's pouring down rain. It's just a matter of time before water gets in there. Whether that immediately breaks it or whether it corrodes at a later date, it's hard to say. I used this in drizzle, mist, and light rain, but the light rain exposure, I'm going to be honest, was only for about 15 minutes before I got annoyed and went home. And I had no issues whatsoever. This didn't even seem to soak up a lot. It's pretty decent, actually, compared to a lot of them. It's retained its... it's not like Granny's Knicker elastic like some of them. It's retained its elasticity. I've had no problems with it. And the mechanism which allows you to change the length has been fine. No problems. It hasn't been sticking or going funny or frayed. No frayed edges. And it's got quite a comfortable coating. It's not as comfortable as something like the Skill Hunt. If you remember the Skill Hunt HO3, on the inside, look. So there's the outside. And then this is the side that attaches to the skin. Look, it's almost got like a microfiber fleece. Very, very comfortable on that. That's probably one of my favourites. Although having said that, I do like the H1. It has these, I think they call these sweat drainage channels or something. Really, they just stop it bouncing around. I've never noticed sweat specifically going in a direction or anything, even when I was running around. But no problems with this, and it's light enough where it's not going to cause any problems on your skin, or it hasn't for me anyway. So you can remove this, you can unclip this clip if you don't want it there, but I just left it on because it's multifunctional. It didn't cause any problems on my forehead, and I tried it higher up than it should be and lower down than it should be, and I did quite a long hike for about 45 minutes in the dark with this. I had to have it on a lower level to make the battery last, but no problems. I didn't come back with, where it looked like I'd been hit on the head with a toffee hammer or something like that, so pretty good. But as you can see, this is only IPX4. In other words, ingress protection is lower on this one. So it's certainly not waterproof. And I know a lot of companies say waterproof, and it isn't waterproof, but at least they're being honest here. So you don't go diving with this, for example. It comes with a 1 meter drop rating. I would have preferred to have seen a little bit higher. Bearing in mind, a lot of these headlamps are going to be at least head height and then dropped. So I would have liked to have seen 1.5 meters plus, but it's plastic and it's a very low cost item, so I'll forgive them on that regards, but I just want to let you know. And it's micro USB charging, and we'll show you the charging just to show that it works. So I'll use the cable that came with it, although I have tested 2 of my own. I've got a braided one and an anchor one. Both of those also work, so it does work with any micro USB. So you just plug it in like that, and then a type A needs to go in whatever charging device you're going to use. We're going to use the trusty X-Star here, so let's get this plugged in. Okay, so when it's charging, you get 2 red lights there. Ignore that figure there. So you can see it's charging red light at about 5 volts and 0.1 of an amp. Rather slow charging, but it's got a small battery, so you don't need a mega rapid, 2 amp charge where it's turned into a toaster and bursting into flames. It's more than adequate for the small light that it is. When charging has completed and it's reached maximum, these will change to green, these auxiliary lights. So pretty simple. I'll be happy buying this for a gift for someone. They can see red means it's charging and green means it's charged. I was more than happy with that. The thing I'm not happy with is, and I'll show you, let's say you want to use this light. So it's on there. We're going around, we're doing a little bit of camping. Now this is getting a little bit low. Right, let's charge it whilst we use it. So let's plug that in. Brilliant. Oh, you can't use this headlamp whilst charging. Now for me, that's a massive no-no. I camp a lot. I do a lot of outdoor stuff. Sometimes I want to use a long lead. I want this in a pocket, and I want to charge that whilst I'm using it. And by doing that, you can put that on a lower level, and the amount of juice that you're putting in overtakes how much you're putting out, and you're slowly charging it. So I think that's quite important. But for whatever reason, they've decided we don't want it like that. So that's a problem. Also, if you go camping and things like that, I like to be able to use that, so I'll prop it up somewhere, put it on charge, put it on low set and do some cooking or something. I'm not having to wait in the dark like a caveman, waiting for that to charge, then take it off charge, then turn it back on. That's it. I'm going to have to knock a point off for that. I know this is a cheap light, and there'll be people in the comment section saying, stop being such a snob. But to me, that's a basic function that they could have added. But okay. So you can see that that's charging there. So we'll unplug that, and I'll just prove it. Look. Listen. It will not work, but watch. When I take that out, now it will work. See? Okay. And you might notice some flickering there. Now we're going to discuss that as well. So let's turn that off. So we'll go through the modes there, and then off. Boom, that's it. Okay, so back to normal. So we'll take that to one side. So it does charge. I've had no problems with that, but it will not function whilst charging, unfortunately. Okay, so I've told you the clips removable. Now let's go through the UI. So we'll close that there. So the UI is a bit of a strange one on this one. It starts on high, then it goes to medium, then it goes to low, then it goes to red and green. And turbo is another matter entirely. So if I turn this on, now it's memory mode, so it'll remember where I last put it in. So we'll turn it on. So there's high. Now that's not my camera there. You see that flickering? We'll discuss that once I've gone through the modes. Okay, so I'll put it there so there's less flickering. So the UI works like this. So one press is on, one press, now to get it to go off, you've got to go through all the modes. So for example, you turn it on and you want to turn it straight off. You can't. You've got to go through all the modes, then green, then red. That's a nuisance. If I want to quickly put this on, do something for 3 or 4 seconds, then turn it off, you can't do that. So can imagine, you quickly do something, yeah, brilliant, now turn it off. Oh, I can't, I've got to go through all the modes, and again, right, finally got there, 10 hours later. That's a nuisance. What happens is, it's got an 8-second timer. So when you turn that on, you have to wait for 8 seconds before you can turn it off. So we'll wait. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I can turn it off. Watch. Otherwise, you're going to advance through modes. So if I turn this on, so you've got high there, then you've got medium, then you've got low, then you've got green, then you've got red, then off. And in regards run times, high will do 150 lumens. So I'll show you that. There's high. So that's 150 lumens. I went walking with this, no problems. Yeah, it was great. That's enough to walk by. I didn't have any problems with that. Now on that, they're saying you'll get about an hour as long as it's fully charged, obviously. Those are Nebo's figures, not mine. I noticed around then, I went on a 45-minute walk and I had there was definitely battery left. So I would agree that that's probably pretty accurate. So turn that off and go back again. So there's high, which is 150. Then down to medium. So there's medium, 50 lumens, 2 hours. Then low is just 15 lumens, but you get 5 hours out of that, which is great. Now, as you can see, the lower you go, the worse the flickering gets. Can you see that? That's unfortunate. That's pulse width modulation. So what they're doing is, and I'll leave that running. In fact, hang on. I'll bring up a little video here that I made. Okay. So as you can see there, right, what I've done is I've recorded at various different resolutions and speeds because it's more apparent on... It'll be more, put it this way, it'll be more apparent to certain people. I'm quite acute to this because I've done a lot of work with monitors and things like that. And I noticed on cheap monitors with low refresh rates, generally cheaper lights, it's a way of modulating how much light you're getting out. And without using a constant circuit, you're turning it on and off rapidly. So if you look at this video here, you can see that top left there, you've got 8K 24 frames per second. There's some banding there, you can see it, and it's a bit irritating. Top right, 4K 30 frames, not as bad, but you can see it flickering up and down. And then bottom left, 4K 60 frames again. You can see the sort of flickering going up and down. And the worst one there is 1080p times 8 slowed down. In other words, that's times 8 times I've slowed that down from what you would see in reality. And as you can see, it's particularly bad. So that's accentuating what you're going to see. And in the middle there, I did a super slow-mo. That's at about 1,000 frames a second. And you can see it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So, okay, so get rid of that video there. Okay, so that's gone, right? So, what's going on here? So let's have a think. So we'll call this lumens. We'll call this time. So this is how much light is being output, okay? So what basically, and this is time. So what they're basically doing is they're turning it on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. So you end up with this sort of thing. This isn't perfectly accurate, but it's a representation of what they're trying to do. So they fire it on, fire it off, fire it on, fire it off. And in this instance, and because I did it at 1000 frames a second in the previous video there, it's not even this. It's almost like it's on for a little bit, then completely off, on for a little bit, then off, on, off. Now, you could argue that some of the manufacturers use this. Yes, they do, but these are so close together that it's very imperceptible. I certainly wouldn't call this imperceptible. Look. I mean, I'm hoping that this picks it up, but look, can you see that? It's flickering pretty badly. And it's not a broken unit. This is how it works. That's unfortunate because I found that irritating. I know there are people watching this who just want a cheap headlamp and they're sitting there thinking, what's all this rubbish? What's he rabbiting on about? I think this is important because it's irritating to the eyes. It was irritating to me as a flashlight snob. Yes, I agree. But I think it'll be a little bit irritating to someone who isn't a flashlight snob and just thinks, well, what's that flickering I'm seeing out the corner of my eye? It's unfortunate that. If you remember, I had a similar thing with one of I think it was the Rovivon A8 Aurora. That had something similar, although I don't think it was as bad as this, and it certainly had a better tint, because this is quite a white tint. It almost looks a little bit greenish there. So that's a shame. It's a shame that it's got pulse width modulation that's very, very, very visible. So let's turn that off. So gone through those main modes. So high 150 at an hour, medium 50 lumens for 2 hours, and low 15 lumens, which was, yeah, that was enough to walk by. I could do it, but it was a little bit more dangerous on whether I would twist my ankle or something like that, but you get a full 5 hours out of that. Now the lower modes I wasn't that impressed with. So we'll go through them. Hang on. So there's your modes. Right. So this green one, even though there's 2 LEDs, it floods out too much. When that looks fine there, doesn't it? But bear in mind, this is going to be on your head, so it was pulled way back, way back, way back, way back. There's my head. I mean, I realise we're in a light room, but you can't even see any of that. There wasn't a lot I could do. I tried to tie my shoelace and a few other things. That I could sort of do that, but from head height looking down, it was rubbish. Same with the red one. The red one wasn't much better, unfortunately. And you can see memory mode. That took me straight back there. And I'll show you the red one there. There's the red one. Red is good for preserving night vision and things like that. Green can be, depending on whether you go from a dark area to a light area or light area. It depends on a lot of things, but generally the lower, less energetic modes will save night vision, which is great, but you still can't see a lot with these. It's just not, it's not enough. It's because both of the red and the green modes run at 10 lumens, but they'll give you 10 hours. So 10 hours on a full battery, that's great, but I didn't find them very useful unless you were really, really up close, or I took it off my head and I was like this and I thought, well, what's the point of having a headlamp if I'm holding the damn thing? So I tried to make a cup of tea in the dark and it just certainly didn't work. Okay, so in regards to beams, I want to discuss the beams because I checked it with a load of other lights. So here's some of the lights we'll look at. So before we look at them, move that out of the way, get rid of that. Let's bring up a picture. Okay, so we'll bring up a picture here. So here's what I did. I got a tripod and I set the camera up and I put the headlamps in exactly the same position. I aimed them at exactly the same position. I held them the same distance away from the camera and I took a 2-second picture. In other words, a 2-second light exposure for each of these photographs. The reason I did that was because the Nightcore NU5 was so dark you couldn't see anything. So by allowing light to come in for a full 2 seconds, it allowed me to show the beam, basically. So if you think, well, hang on, why does that look so light? Was it really that light? No, it wasn't. Neither were any of the others, but they're slightly boosted because of the allowance in time there. So I just wanted to explain that. So let's have a look at what we can see. So the Nebo Mycro, top left there. Looks great, doesn't it? You've got quite a bright hot spot there. It's got a little bit of throw, you can see into the distance. It's okay. Peripheral was fine. Certainly was okay. It was wide enough, I would say, for a headlamp. It's just a low-cost headlamp. I'm not going to complain. Now looking at the Nightcore, which is bigger, heavier, a lot more expensive. Kind of similar. You could argue that the hot spot in the middle is smaller, and it's got a slightly less white beam there. But peripheral was better, as you can see on the far left of the image of the Nightcore compared to the left image of the Nebo, or in fact the right hand side. In fact, we'll zoom in. If we zoom into the left hand side of the Mycro and the right hand side of the Mycro, can you see that little tree on the right hand side? It's much more illuminated on the Nightcore. The reason for that is it has a slightly wider beam and it's a lot lighter. You get a lot more beam. Bearing in mind the Nebo was putting out around 400 lumens there, and the Mycro is putting out close to 1,000. So yes, there is a light difference, but width-wise, it's certainly much better. Same story with the Wuben. That's kind of, it's almost brighter than the Mycro maybe, but slightly better throw, you could argue. And then the Mycro NU5 was pretty useless. I tried walking with it. It was hard work, because it's not putting out a lot of lumens and it's so dispersed. You can't really do much with it other than if you're sitting cross-legged cooking in the night or something like that. Skill Hunt, nice diffuse beam, not a lot of throw there. It's slightly lacking, you could see it on the peripheral vision to the left and the right, but that's because it's a TIR and it's not putting out a massive, I think it was something like 850 to 900 lumens, clocked that in as. And the Sofern, which I'm a big fan of for the price, I think that does a pretty good job. It's got enough peripheral, pretty good, and a nice hotspot there which throws when you want it, and pretty good for the price. Okay, so get rid of that picture. Right, that's gone. Okay, so it's all very well looking at these images, but what I want to do is I want to show you the lights. So just for comparison of size, so here's this, and it's tiltable, very light. Now I've compared it with, and it's turned itself on there for some reason, or has it? No, that one has. Okay, let's turn that off. That's the Skill Hunt off. Okay, so compared to this, again, another single strap, very light. I like the inside of this. It's got like a little texture to it, but this was too diffuse, and I'll show you watch. If you look at the beam on this, there, can you see how it's pretty wide? You've got a little bit of wide. It's not too wide though. You've got the hot spot there, which is coming through this section, and then you've got your spill here and here, and you can see there's your, I mean, it's hard to see because it's flickering, which is one of the problems with this light, but there's your spot, and then there's a spill. But when you compare it to something like this, which is the Mycro, and I'll show you, boom, look how diffuse that is. You could argue that's better, look, but then when you pull that back, it's not producing a massive lot of light. I found this fine for sitting cross-legged, doing stuff, cooking. I liked it for purposes like that, and it's got little secondary modes, but very light. I just think this is a strange light. They sometimes call it a headlamp mate. In other words, you're supposed to mate it up with a main beam, but then what's the point of having a main beam if you've got to have this as well? I've seen people collect this to their dog and things like that to prevent it getting lost, which makes sense. You can put it on that mode there, or more of a flash mode, or super flash mode, or you can even have white flash mode. Turn that off. Okay, so that's not particularly good for hiking, whereas this is. I was able to hike with this no problem. This, I was thinking, am I going to break a leg here by falling over in the dark? I also compared to one of my favorites, because bear in mind this is about 15 bucks, okay, very cheap. Okay, if you wanted to double that and spend about 30 bucks, SP40, brilliant. SP40 by Sofern. It's light, it's cheap, and I love the beam. It's wide, but it's orange peel, so you get a little bit of throw. Really like this. You know, I've got no problems with recommending this. In fact, let's screw that back on because I unscrewed that. There you go. So nice tint on it as well. No flickering, as you can see, in comparison. A bit more of a warm beam. This is white light. This is a little bit more towards the neutral. I certainly wouldn't call it a warm tint, although the center looks warm. But you see how wide the spill is, look. In fact, I'll show you that, look. There, you see that? Then we'll compare it. Although this is pretty good, width-wise. Okay, you see? It's pretty good width-wise, isn't it? It's not too far off, but you're just not getting the same output. And you're not going to get the same battery capacity, although this is heavier. So do you want something heavier, or do you want something very light that you're just going to use quickly? So I'm just want to discuss prices here before I tell you about the goods and bad points. If you want a TIR, which has a more diffuse beam, here's the SO3. In fact, hang on, let me get this right. It's the HO3, sorry, by Skill Hunt. Still a big fan of this because it's slim and light, but again, it's still, you know, more than double the size and a lot heavier, but you're getting more capacity and more lumens output. But nice, and it's got millions of modes. I'm just showing you the lights that I did compare it with, and then you've got proper specific ones, which are this is the H1 by Wuben here, and this is the HC65 by Mycro. Very, very similar. It's got a very similar smooth reflector there, and then they've got a secondary high CRI mode, but very bright, you know, very, very bright lights. So I'm not going to bore you by showing you all of those, because I've got reviews of all of these lights. If you really want to go and look at them, you can. I want to try and get this review under 6 hours, because you know what I'm like for rattling on. So let's discuss pros and cons. Okay, pros. Low price. I saw this between 13 and 15 bucks. That's brilliant, especially for a brand name. I'd never heard of them, but now that I've looked them up, I do realise they make a lot of different equipment. So it's a name that I could imagine you could claim on the warranty if this was a load of crap, in other words. So whoosh, get that back in the bin. So nice to see. This was great. It's tiltable. You've got a clip if you need it. I think this was enough of a flap for charging, but I would like to have seen a bit of a better flap. It's a little bit weak, but at least it faces the right way. So if rain comes on, it's not going to go in. At least to put that the right way. So fair enough. Okay, so low price, tiltable, pretty decent amount of light. The only problem is, and I'll show you, we've gone through all of those different modes, medium, high and low. If you're on any mode and you long press it, there's turbo, there's 400. Now, have you noticed how the flickering ceases there? It is there, you just can't see it as much. The higher the mode, the less you seem to get of a flicker. But the problem is, okay, so you've got that running, you can see it a little bit there, see? Depends what you've got it at. So that's running at 400 lumens. Now, the problem is it only does that for 30 seconds. So to prove that, I'll leave that running and you'll notice it'll step down. So I'll show you there. So we're still running at the moment. So there's your 400 and you can see some banding and flickering there from the pulse width modulation there. Step down. So what it does is it steps all the way down to 150 lumens, which gives you your hour. So unfortunately, although the 400 lumens is great, and I compared it, I went walking along a river and all sorts of things, brilliant when you need it. It's only 30 seconds and then boom, it goes down. But at least it goes down to a mode that you could still walk by if you really wanted to. 150 lumens was enough for me to walk along paths, more than enough. So I'm happy with that. Okay, so tiltable, decent light. The UI is easy, so you could buy this for someone and they would understand it. They're not going to get lost. It's not like Angel where you've got to have a mathematics degree. I mean, yes, I'm overemphasizing that point, I realise, but for a non-flashaholic, I can see them seeing Angela and crying, whereas they just want something similar. Simple. You can reverse this because obviously it starts high and then goes medium, low, green, red. You can reverse that if you want to with a press. I'm not going to go into that now because it's irrelevant, but you can take that and reverse it if you wanted to, which makes a little bit more sense. I left it as this setting because I wanted to show you what it is out of the box. So it's an easy UI that you can give to your relatives and they would understand it, and it does have memory mode, so whatever your last mode was, when you turn it back on, it's going to go straight to that. That's a time saver and I appreciate that. Now, cons: micro USB, come on, in this day and age. Type C please, that would be lovely. So I'm going to knock off for that. You can't use it whilst it's charging. Why? Okay, so again, that's something I really insist on with a headlamp, so knock points off for that. 30 second step down from 400, that's annoying because that's a very rapid step down, but I understand why they've done that. This is so small, if you had it higher than that, the battery just isn't going to last, and it's going to make you get angry with the light. I can imagine people who don't realise that LEDs produce a lot of heat and need to step down, or they use a lot of battery quickly. They might think that it's a load of rubbish, but that's as a consequence of the size of it and the size of the cell. So I understand why they've done that, but it's still a little bit annoying. And the biggest point for me is this pulse width modulation hell. I just cannot get over that. Look, what the hell is that? I mean, I don't mind a bit here and there, and if you get the right angle there, it doesn't look too bad, but there, nah, that's too irritating for me. I found it too irritating. When I was outside doing long treks, I kind of got used to it, but it depended. It was always there and it was always in my mind. And then when I switched back to one of these to do comparisons, I could feel myself going, that's more relaxing, especially on the eyes. Whereas this flickering was just, a little bit irritating. And, it'll be more apparent to some people. It was very apparent to me, and then I'm going to knock points off that. So I've got to give this a mark. Now, you could argue, well, micro USB, rubbish, doesn't work whilst charging, pulse width, hell, step down too quickly. Yes, they're all bad points. However, I have to temper the mark that I'm going to give it by the fact that it's about 15 bucks. So I can't be too hard at that price range, can I? So if this was more expensive, if this was about 30 bucks plus, I'd probably give it about a 7. Nah, a 6. 6.5 maybe. Oh, I'd give it a 6.5. But it's cheap. So I'm going to give it a 7. In fact, I mean, even giving it a 7 seems a bit hard on the company because they've done a decent job, and if you're not a flashaholic, it probably won't be an issue. I just think the secondary modes were lacking. Rapid step down, that's constant flickering, strange UI choice where you've got to wait 8 seconds before you can turn the bloody thing off. I don't know whether to give it 6.5 or so. I'm going to give it a 7 because there's room for improvements there. Change that. Put in a bigger battery. I don't know. There's room. There's things I would certainly change. We'll give it a 7. Come on, 7 out of 10 means it's fine as a backup, but I certainly wouldn't go camping with this. Put it that way. I think that's fair. I think I'm being fair there. Okay, 7 out of 10, and that's been nice. I would maybe give it a 6.5 if I was having a bad day, but the sun's been out today, so we'll give it a 7. So a lot of things I would change. So what I've done is I've tried to do as many outdoor shots as possible. I've also done a lot of comparison shots because I like my reviews to show you. So it's all very well me giving you my opinion, which is just an opinion. I'm not an expert. I like you to be able to see the shots and decide for yourself, because you might see the shots and say, well, I don't care if you slag this off, because quite frankly, I think that looks fine, especially for the price, and that's fine. That's your opinion. So you check out my shots here and see what you think. But I'm going to give it a 7, a kind 7. So enough of me waffling. Let's get out.